So guys, now let us understand that what exactly asynchronous or synchronous means. So till now, whatever code that you have written so far is a synchronous code. That is whatever short programs on trees or linked list or data structures or competitive programming that you have written so far is actually synchronous code. In all those programs that you wrote, there was one common thing. And that common thing was that the algorithmic steps were implemented in a definite order. Alright? In fact, shorter the size of the program, more is the probability that your program would be synchronous. Now let us take one real world example of preparing the cake. That is, what are the steps that are involved in order to prepare the cake. And then we will discuss the synchronous way of preparing the cake and what would be the asynchronous way of preparing the same cake. So in order to prepare the cake, the very first thing that you need is the ingredients which you would need in order to prepare the cake in the first place. And then you would going to mix those ingredients in the appropriate proportion with each other. Then in the next step, you would going to heat your oven to the right temperature. Alright, and once the oven is heated to the right temperature, you will start baking the cake. And finally, you will wait for the cake to get ready, and once the cake is ready, then you would eat. Alright, so in this very simple example, there is one thing is common, and that thing is that you have to perform the steps in definite order. You cannot alter the order of any of these steps in order to prepare the cake. Or even if you alter the order, one thing is common, that you cannot perform two steps at the same time. And another thing to notice here is that you have to wait until the cake is ready. So this is the synchronous way of doing. If you write a short program in which you would going to implement all these steps, you would going to implement an algorithm which would be divided into step number 1, step number 2, step number 3, step number 4, 5 and 6. That is, your program will execute through the steps from 1 to 6 in the same order. And that program would be called as a synchronous program. Now let us see what would be the asynchronous way of preparing the same cake. So of course you will mix the ingredients with each other in the required proportion as usual. But while you are mixing the ingredients, it is possible that you actually heat oven to the right temperature in parallel. Alright, and once the oven is heated up to the right temperature, you would start baking the cake. So you can see that these steps on the left hand side and heating the oven to the right temperature on the right hand side can be done in parallel. Alright, then going further, once the cake is ready, let us suppose that your oven is automatic and it alarms when the cake is baked. Then you start eating the cake. Alright, your baking machine generates an alarm which tells you that your cake has been baked. And once your cake is ready, then you start eating the cake. So note that in asynchronous way, there is no waiting. You are not waiting for the cake to get ready. You are doing something else. Here you are waiting. And in this example, you are not waiting for the cake to get ready. You are doing something else. Your baking machine will generate an alarm telling you that the cake is ready. So whatever work you were doing, you can simply stop doing that work, come back and eat the cake. Alright. So two takeaways from this asynchronous way of baking the cake example. The first is that perform the steps which could be done in parallel. Do those steps in parallel which could be performed in parallel. And the second takeaway is that you are not supposed to block or wait for something to complete. So do independent tasks in parallel. This is one of the rules of the asynchronous programming. And your program should not wait. In fact, your program must do something else. And your program should have a mechanism to generate some signal or some kind of a notification telling some other part of the program that, hey, I've computed the result, come and consume. Alright, so your program should not block. If your program blocks for something to get completed, it is almost a bad software design. It would lead to underutilization of your machine or resources. And finally, asynchronous programming doesn't mean multi-threading, but it is closely tied to it. Alright? So in this course, I will show you how to write a programs in which different parts of the program executes in different order, but eventually your end result is same as you would have written the program in a synchronous way.